Is The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, the remake, worth watching, or should you just hire a sitter and go out and do something else? Welcome back to another Movie Nights movie review. Today we are talking about The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. This is the 2025 version that is directed by Michelle Garza Cervera, or Cerva. Forgive me if I said anything incorrectly. And it stars Maika Monroe and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. This is a remake of the film from the 90s. The release date originally was 1992, directed by Curtis Hanson, director of LA Confidential, I believe. And essentially, the story follows a nanny who moves into a new home, seemingly to help take care of the children, but there seems to be a much more sinister agenda going on. And in both films, kind of have that same basic plot. They both make stark differences, or the remake, I should say, makes a stark difference from the original film that I actually enjoyed. But overall, I'm not going to lie, I feel very down the middle, mixed to negative on the film, and I'll kind of dive into that right now. But before so, I kind of want to give some interesting backstory regarding this film and myself. The original film I have a connection to because there's a character in that film named Peyton, and my parents actually got the name Peyton, which is my sister's name, from that movie. So I feel oddly connected to that movie. And in this movie, the remake, a good friend of mine named Roxy Rivera, who I'll always shout out whenever she gets a great new role, has a brief role in the film. She shares a scene with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and does a phenomenal job. So I feel I have a cool connection to both films, which I think is very interesting. But anyway, diving into the review, I think that this rebooted film, this new version for Hulu, does have great things in it. I think it does some interesting things and has some interesting ideas, but overall it kind of falls flat, especially in the third act when it's building up to, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's building up to this finale, this kind of face-off that ultimately just fumbles and falls apart. It didn't really seem like it was very exciting. Some of the build-up early on was very exciting, but there's a key moment in the movie where Maika Monroe's character goes to meet another character who's a friend of Mary Elizabeth Winstead's, who's kind of investigating her. And that whole sequence kind of ruined what was remaining of the build-up for me, in that it seemed like such an illogical thing for the friend character to do. The script was kind of hit or miss up to that point, but it could have really saved itself with a solid ending. But that moment in particular really kind of fell through the cracks for me. I also think that there are some characters that it fumbles in the film. For example, there is a daughter character in the film, and the character's name is Emma. And in the beginning of the movie, they set up Emma to kind of be this very smart character that Maika Monroe's character is almost trying to manipulate in a way. But the movie kind of does the Emma character injustice by having her go down this path that allows her to be so easily manipulated. And yes, she's a child. Yes, Maika Monroe's character has certain motivations, but it was almost set up in the beginning to make it seem like this child was very smart and that this child was going to be able to almost be a point of contention for the plot, and it kind of fell apart in that way. I do want to shout out the actor, though, the child actor. I believe her name is pronounced Malia Vega. Unbelievable performance for a child actor. I thought they did a great job. I also think most of the performances in the movie are great, kind of shifting into some positives here. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is phenomenal in the film. Maika Monroe is also very scary, very down-to-earth, very interesting. A change that the movie makes that I like a lot is both versions of the film have a sort of underlying revenge story in one way, shape, or form. One's more thinly veiled than the other. But in this film, the character that was typically in the original film set up as the antagonist in this film has a motivation that is much more sympathetic to the audience, especially when you look at the actions of the protagonist in their past. They make both characters really flawed. And there's kind of a did something occur, did something not occur involving, sexual abuse, which was also a theme of the original film. And the way that part of the backstory is tied together, I did think was very interesting and a very cool update to the story. Again, I just think its own script fell apart and didn't do it justice by the end of it. And, like I said, the performances are great. I do think that there are some interesting visuals, especially for just an original Hulu release. But overall, strong performances aren't enough to carry a script that falls apart, especially when I was actually very intrigued in the first act of it, in the first part of it. And, it's a shame to see something fall apart like this in the, comparisons to Thief of Joy. I'm not comparing just for the sake of it, but I do think the original film is better. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean you won't enjoy this film. I actually am very curious as to what you think about this film. Please comment and let me know what you think of the reboot for The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I'd love to see what you think. But for me, unfortunately, while it has things to enjoy, it just kind of fell apart by the end. But again, what did you think? Please let me know in the comments down below. Have you seen the original? Are you a fan of that movie? Do you have any personal connections to films through family, relations, or people you know in them? Please let me know. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.